Well, we guessed it. It's time for Dabi Todoroki to finally make his first appearance. Hey YouTube, it's Basically Anime. Today we have an interesting and long-awaited chapter to review today, and today we have My Hero Academia chapter 290. So I'm assuming you guys have seen the spoilers. I mean, how could you guys not? It was literally trending on Twitter, but forget that. So we left off as Giant Tomakia finally arrived on the scene and brought the League of Villains with him. Now before we get any further, if you love My Hero or like My Hero Academia manga and anime related content, make sure you stick around, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and turn on post notifications so you get notified every time I post. Okay, so the chapter starts off as the manga introduces it as Dabi's dance. We are introduced to a hospital where we hear someone saying or screaming, "Turn off the TV immediately" in room 315. Now, the only person that is relevant to a hospital at this time is Shoto's mom, Rei Todoroki. Now, some of you guys might know what's about to happen, some of you don't. We see the person screaming for the TV to be turned off start running down a hallway saying, "What the hell is going on?" Meaning whatever is happening is big and might not be isolated to that certain room. We then get introduced to another voice, but it seems to be coming from an electrical device saying it won't let me go farther and that he hopes he got the right room. And this video starts on the TV to buffer in. We then see who is viewing it, which is Rei Todoroki. Now this isn't a surprise because, well, this was in the spoilers of chapter 290. We then see she's viewing a pre-recorded video of Dabi on a hospital TV as he gets ready to explain to her what's going on. Okay, so we then transition back to the main attraction or main action of the last chapter, which was the hospital area where Deku and the rest of them were, as Giant Tomakia, along with the League of Villains, or whatever is left of the League of Villains, arrive on the scene, as Giant Tomakia, who apparently still has some ground to cover between him and Shigaraki, screams "Master" as he heads over quickly toward the area. Now we left off with Shigaraki as he literally just went crazy and was fighting a mental battle with the first user of All For One in his head. As we then see in the next panel what's going on, we then see inside of Shigaraki's head as All For One says he is surprised to see Shigaraki still standing, and at that point I was thinking, you and me broke. Shigaraki has been burned, bruised, and beaten and still manages to keep moving toward his dream. That is awesome willpower. Anyway, All For One continues to say he has directed all of Shigaraki's pain into the part of his spine where the regeneration quirk, which is kind of decaying or is kind of devolving at this point, to minimize his pain, and says all he needs to do is retreat with Giant Tomakia, which is highly unlikely as Shigaraki has stated he just doesn't want to give up. But at the same time, we then see that right now All For One is pulling the strings on Shigaraki's actions and is the only reason Shigaraki is still standing. Shoto Todoroki takes this window of time before reinforcements like the League of Villains arrive to attack Shigaraki, as he jumps into the air using his ice quirk and says while heading on to Shigaraki he can't take on Gigantomakia and Shigaraki at the same time, so he's targeting the end of Shigaraki, which is to me the smart and strategic choice. Now I think this shows off the smart and strategic aspect of Shoto a little bit and shows he can make a great hero one day. Now Nejire, who is also on the scene, must have realized this and moves in on Shigaraki with Shoto. Shigaraki notices this and says half ice and wave motion, which is both Shoto and Nejire's quirk. They are really on giving me a break. But at the same time I'm thinking, well, they kind of would give you a break if you wouldn't keep coming back after every attack. Like, how much times have they went full power against you and you kept coming back? But anyway, in this next panel, we then see Nejire say 100% output as she powers up. And I think this will be the first time we've seen her at full power, as she is now getting a chance to shine. Likewise, Shoto does the same thing, powers up and uses thermal revolution, and they won't send it straight at Shigaraki. We then see a massive panel of both of their attacks combined, and they call it Flash Freeze Heat Wave Green Flood, as we see an impressive attack launched by Nejire and Shoto, and this might be one of my favorite moments of the chapter. I love the action. But all of a sudden, we hear from Endeavor, who we just found out has minor injuries. He screams very loudly, "Run or get out of there." Now at first, I thought he would be proud to see his son push out such a massive attack, But out of nowhere, Gigantomachia barrels in and says Shoto and Nejire flying, while also breaking the ice wall, which comes crashing down on Endeavor and the rest of the heroes. Shoto manages to get his footing, while Nejire steadies herself in the air. Ida, who is also at the scene, managed to get Bakugo out of the way, then screams for Nejire and Shoto, but is interrupted by Bakugo, who is still alive. Remember, he's still severely injured. Now, this is where my favorite aspect of Bakugo comes in, and it is his stubbornness. He tells Ida to let him go, but obviously Ida, analyzing the situation, says no due to his injuries, which is obviously the smart thing to do. Back with Gigantomachia, who managed to somehow pick Shigaraki out of the chaos and starts to hold him in his hand, asking for the next orders. We then see Shigaraki practically knocked out and is not responding. I mean, he has been fighting for like an hour straight, and to be honest, he deserves a break even though he's still a villain. Spinner sees Shigaraki and says they have been through so much, or at least that is what he wanted to say, until he saw Shigaraki and said, "What the hell happened to you?" Which is pretty hilarious, you know. They're about to say, "Yeah, we suffered through so much, Shigaraki, please save us." And then he sees Shigaraki practically burned to a crisp. Back on the ground, Endeavor checks on his son. He then, on the inside, apologizes to Hawk for not taking the villains down, as they have a mutual understanding, as we saw at the end of season 4, in a fascinating relationship. He then thinks to himself that he must take down Gigantomachia, but then reveals that half of his lungs are gone from overuse of his quirk. Now, I could go on and on how that wouldn't make sense. I mean, you need lungs to breathe, but it is My Hero Academia, and Endeavor's willpower is so strong. But he reassures himself that he will prevail and powers up. But while this is happening, we then see Dabi, who notices him, as we get into the interesting and long-awaited part of this chapter. Now, we left off with Dabi and Endeavor as they sort of mash themselves up for a future epic firefighting fight. But right now, Endeavor is not looking so good. Now for the epic reveal, he then says, "Hey Shoto, no, long time no see," in a very chill-like manner. Endeavor also notices him and says, to make matters worse, the League of Villains is here and they can't handle any more villains at this moment. He called out to Dabi, but is interrupted as Dabi pulls out a vial of liquid and says, "Why must you call me that? Or why must you call me that by my villain name?" And then pours the liquid on his black hair and reveals that his name is Toya Todoroki, the presumed dead but kind of long lost member of the Todoroki family. Now for my reaction, to be honest, we, the My Hero Academia fandom, were sort of expecting this. This wasn't a shock. We knew it would happen eventually, so it was a matter of when it would happen, and it is happening now. Now Endeavor, which I practically explained his reaction in yesterday's video, he is shocked, and his presumed dead son is now alive, but unfortunately is a well-known, dangerous villain who is probably a mass murderer. And now this mass murderer or dangerous villain is now his precious Toya Todoroki, as we have seen a scene of him praying to his son's grave, and now he has to see that his son isn't that precious or isn't even dead at all. Shoto is also shocked, but not to the same degree as Endeavor, and Dabi and Shoto have encountered and fought in the past. Deku, who recognized the name Toya, realizes that this is Shoto's brother. Now, to be honest, I like how what they did with Deku. Now, the last 10 chapters has all been about Deku Shigaraki, Deku Nanashimura, All For One, and Shigaraki, but now they're like not sidelining Deku, but like saying, yeah, we're kind of done with that, and we're bringing other characters like Nejire. They brought in Bakugo for a while. They're bringing in the Todorokis and the League of Villains, also Uraka and Toga, so I'm pretty good or proud that the writers did that. But while they are pondering on this, we then transition back to the hospital with Rei Todoroki as she watches the video left by Dabi or Toya Todoroki. He introduces himself as Toya Todoroki, the oldest or the eldest son of Endeavor or the Todoroki family. But the thing is, he's broadcasting this everywhere nationwide for everyone to see due to the help of Skeptic on Gigantomachia's back, and he's about to ruin Endeavor's reputation. He then goes on to explain, as millions are watching, Endeavor has a long history of being power hungry and is in despair because he could not surpass All Might. He forcibly took on a wife in order to give birth to a child, which is Shoto Todoroki, who would even possess a more powerful quirk. I was created for my father's selfish dream. We see all these people dead, now hearing that Endeavor, the #1 hero who is supposed to protect them, is not protecting him but has a villain son. However, he continues, I was deemed a failure and quickly abandoned and tossed inside and forgotten. That's the part where Endeavor has practically neglected all other kids but Rei Todoroki. But I never forgot, he continued. I watched their activities from afar. People like to think their actions are free from guilt, but they're not. My fire that burned others is indeed Endeavor's fire. So he's saying all the people I've killed is due to Endeavor, and I am Endeavor's son, so the fire technically comes from Endeavor, saying if you guys want to blame me for killing your family members, blame Endeavor too. As we see Skeptic on Giant Makia's back saying, my pre-recorded life story is being broadcasted right now all around the airwaves and the internet. What an ace up my sleeve. Dabi, who is breaking out all these Joker moves, he's clapping his hand, dancing on Giant Makia's back and says, how exhilarating. Your disgraceful fall as a hero has begun. Ever since that day, the only thing I could think about was thinking of ways I could maximize the destruction of your career. He continues by saying, did you know that I used to go to Natsu every day? Asking him why I existed, he felt so bad about himself. My dad doesn't even want to talk to me. Why am I still living? At first, my plan was to wait until your little Shoto doll has gotten all big and famous. Then I kill Rei Todoroki. But then, in an absurdly convenient turn of events, you finally became the #1 hero, and I couldn't stand watching you wallow yourself in your dream like that. You wouldn't even die in our last encounter. My heart sank. I even sent the Emperor of Fallen Knight an ending to you. He's talking about the 2 high-end Noming. He probably sent that to Endeavor to try to kill him. You still survived like the cockroach that you are. That #1 title you've always wanted is a lot of pressure, huh? Has your heart been purified with all the praise from the public? You seriously thought that if you kept your eyes forward toward the future, the past would just forget about itself, didn't you? It's time for someone to give you a little life lesson. As we keep zooming in, panel after panel, monologue after monologue on Endeavor and Shoto's shocked faces, as Dabi says, the past never forgets, as he screams at both of the Todorokis. What a you reap what you sow moment. Let us fall together, Angie Todoroki. Come dance with your son in hell. Now for my review of this chapter, I honestly give it a 10 out of 10. First favorite moment was when Nejire and Shoto combined their powers to attack Shigaraki. And then we got to see what we always wanted to see, Dabi. Now to be honest, I expected Dabi to reveal himself in the chapter to be over. I was not expecting him to practically scar Endeavor for life. Overall, like I said, it's a 10 out of 10. Now, this is the end of my review / reaction. If you love My Hero Academia manga and anime related content, feel free to stick around and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you smash that like button and also turn on post notifications so you get notified every time I post. Make sure you leave down in the comments what you thought about this chapter and I will most likely respond.